Purple tomatoes, taste, waste, nutritive value, and so much more. That's what we're talking about in this episode of the Business of Agriculture. Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of the Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field, then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. Got a great one for you today. I'm talking to Nathan Pumplin. He's a PhD. He's the CEO of Norfolk Healthy Produce. By the way, he's a PhD from Cornell, the only Ivy League school that's also an ag school. Kind of a neat little stat there for you. But he's not in the state of New York right now. He's in California, Davis, which is another site of a very good ag school, UC Davis. And we're talking about purple tomatoes. And you're saying, what the hell, Damian? Why do we need purple tomatoes? Nathan's going to explain all that. But as I said, we're titling this Purple Tomatoes, Taste, Waste, Nutritive Value, and so much more, including the business side of being a startup in a pretty well-entrenched, let's face it, vertically integrated produce sector. It seems to me that is going to be a tough uphill slog for something like this. So anyway, first question, Nathan. Why the hell do I need a purple tomato? Tomatoes are red. We all know this, unless they're green, in which case you fry them. Hints like the movie Fried Green Tomatoes. Anyway, why do I need a purple tomato?
Well, Damian, you're great to be on the podcast, and that's a great question to start with. The first is, we all want to be healthy. We want to live long, vital lives, and part of that is eating a very healthy diet. That means all the vitamins and nutrients that we need. And one class of nutrients which are very healthy are antioxidants, and particularly purple ones that comes from fruit and vegetables like blueberries, like blackberries, like eggplants. Most Americans eat about 12 milligrams per day of these. And if you get 100 to 200 times more, 10 to 20 times more, then you start to have benefits associated with that. So what our product offers is, in the form of a tomato, which Americans eat a lot of, we can now get these healthy purple nutrients.
All right, so it's antioxidants, period. That's the reason we invented this. Okay, this was invented not by you. You're the CEO, and you're supposed to be out here making this whole thing work. Correct. Your company, how old is Norfolk Healthy Produce?
So Norfolk Healthy Produce has been around for a little over 2 years, and we started in the US to launch this product on the market and develop other products like it. We are connected to a company called Norfolk Plant Sciences, based in the UK, started by the scientists who developed the purple tomato, among many other improved varieties of fruits and vegetables that can bring a lot of benefits to consumers and a lot of benefits to producers.
All right, so the product was invented by people in Britain, and that's...
You got it.
And did they set out because of the British have invented, I'm a British roots. They invented India Pale Ale, which I'm a big fan of. The
world is much better for them.
They've invented a few things that are pretty cool. The Rolls Royce. Anyway, was it all about the antioxidants, or did they set out to create something else and stumbled onto this?
So it was a mix of both. So I'm a huge believer, having a PhD, in basic science and curiosity-driven research. So Kathy Martin and Jonathan Jones, the two founders, they work in nutritional fortification of foods and disease resistance. So most of your listeners probably know, if you look at the bottom line of farming, the losses due to diseases and the input costs of pesticides, of controlling diseases, are quite substantial. Yep. And so the scientists' research really is asking questions to understand, how does biology work? How do plants grow? This is what underlies all of agriculture. What they realized is the discoveries they had made, like the purple tomato, like disease-resistant plants, have a huge opportunity out into the market, but products like these are not getting out to the market. There's a very inefficient process that moves discoveries from a university out into the market. So what they did, the first report of the purple tomato was in 2008, and they started a company at that point, filed a patent for the tomato, and that's owned by the company. They had the foresight, so huge credit to Kathy Martin and Jonathan Jones for recognizing this could have a big opportunity. If we're going to realize that, we need a company. It's not going to happen from a university. And then you look at the timeline from starting in 2008. Here we are in 2024, launching our first product on the market.
So the old thing is, we oftentimes, in all businesses, are you creating a product that the marketplace asked for? Or are you creating a product that you think the marketplace needs, and then you're going to shove it down their throat a little bit? This seems, I hear the health claim, and we've heard this before, but does the consumer really... First off, you've got the visual to get past. We'll get through the marketing here in a minute, but let's talk about the idea of I came with this product because we kind of were bumbling around in the lab, and we came up with this thing, and oh, holy shit, here we go. We got a purple tomato. That sure is novel. It's novel, but did the marketplace ask for it? I don't know that any tomato eater ever said, and I'm not being mean, I'm just talking about, this is business. We're the business of agriculture. So from the business standpoint, I don't know any tomato eater, and I am one. I wanted a more flavorful tomato. I still want to go through a salad bar and have a tomato that actually has flavor. I want a tomato on my cheeseburger at a fast food restaurant that actually tastes like something other than water. I want a flavorful tomato. I've never said I want a purple tomato. Does this, because the antioxidants, I got to be honest with you, I don't put a tomato on my burger and say, oh my God, I've got all the antioxidants I've ever wanted. So, I mean, did the marketplace ask for this?
So the marketplace is asking for this today. And I'm really glad that we're speaking here in March 2024. 2 years ago, when I was heavily involved in this, everyone told me the market isn't asking for this. I've never asked for a purple tomato.
I'm not the first person to bring this up.
This is a tech push. You're not the first person to ask this question. This is just a tech push, and nobody really needs this. Our suspicions that if we could get a prototype product together and out onto the market, this is what drove us. This is what I've been working for. And it didn't just happen overnight. After, on our end, over 2 years of working very hard to get a product together, get it out in front of people, we are now seeing huge demand pull. So what does this mean? I just wanted to provide some evidence. So grocery store buyers are now clamoring over each other to get the very limited supply that we're launching in grocery stores this year. The reason is they're seeing their consumers love the product and are buying a ton of it. And we have a few examples we can point to from our own consumer research and our recent foray into selling seeds to home gardeners of the purple tomato variety. So the other thing that I just need to say is, you've never asked for a purple tomato. You know what you want in tomatoes. A few hundred years ago, nobody ate tomatoes in the Western world, right? Then, not too long ago, there were only big beefsteaks. There weren't cherry tomatoes. There weren't grape tomatoes. Now we live in a world with yellow tomatoes, with cherry tomatoes. And in fact, that is the most lucrative and fastest growing category of tomatoes, is the clamshell of snacker tomatoes. So it may seem from the outside.
Now, wait a minute, just so I understand, because you're a little too much into tomato talk. I want to make sure for the person that's in the cranberry business or whatnot, which one are you talking about? So yes, the neat little history of tomatoes. They're South American.
Great question. Right? Yeah, absolutely. So they're South American. That's the country of origin. Yep. So they were brought first to Europe after the first Europeans explored the New World. And for hundreds of years, most Europeans said, hey, we're not going to eat tomatoes. They're poisonous. They're part of the nightshade family. Same thing with potatoes. So this has been quite dynamic. Flash forward to today. So when you all go into the produce section of your grocery store, you probably see some red tomatoes that are 4 or 5 on a green stem, and you'll see a clamshell of little small bite-sized tomatoes. Nature Sweet Cherubs is one of the biggest brands in that area. This is a category that's been growing very quickly, and it's an interesting entry into the business of produce. Produce traditionally was very seasonal, price fluctuations. It's a huge business to try to match supply and demand. What the packaged tomato industry has done is said, we're going to offer a produce product that is the same price 12 months of the year. And this is quite a huge advance in the business of agriculture when you think about production and trying to buffer supply with demand.
And by the way, like corn and soybeans, broadacre stuff, wheat, you can store that stuff in a bin for literally years, blow a little air on it. And then that's about that, that after that, then it becomes, okay, more of a challenge, more tenuous, more difficult, more difficult to store, perishability, then you get into the meat products. Okay, you can freeze it, but by God, you better make sure you have good infrastructure, or cheeses, you can stick them in a cave, whatever those things are. By the time you get down to the produce, the business you're in, you got about a week. And so when you talked about I want to get to food waste. So don't let me not get to food waste, Nathan, because
I'm going to take you right there.
Yeah, I don't want you to go there again. I want to stick on the nutrition, and then we're going to get the food waste, because that's a big one right there. First off, is this more nutritious? You talk about the antioxidants. What else? What about my vitamins? What about my minerals? What about my other things? I don't care about antioxidants. I'm just saying, if I'm a consumer that doesn't.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. Well, so the best logic that I've heard and what I often repeat is to eat the rainbow. If you want to know what a healthy, nutritious diet is, it's a lot of fresh fruits and fresh vegetables of many different colors and many different types. That's the best way to ensure that you're getting a good mix of vitamin and nutrients. So our product fits in. If you were to lay out all the fresh fruits and vegetables that you eat in a rainbow, what you'd find is there's a heck of a lot of red fruits. There's a heck of a lot of yellow ones. There's a lot of green vegetables. There aren't a lot of purple ones. Mm-hmm. So what our product does very obviously is starts to balance out that food rainbow. So there's a lot more volume that you can now access with purple nutrients. So does that answer your first question? Because I do want to talk about...
I'm colorblind, Nathan, but I generally, my wife says every time I used to come home, I say, I need a new shirt on the road.
1 in 12 men is.
And she says, you thought that was blue, didn't you? I said, is this not a blue shirt? And she says, no, it's purple. And so this happens a lot, or I buy something I think is orange because I generally see orange, or at least I think I do. And she says, yeah, that's pink. So anyway, so I don't know if I'm getting my purple vegetables or not. I first came to mind was, aren't beets purple?
I'd say beets are red.
Okay.
And they have a different pigment
you're talking
from a different class.
Nathan, you're out here pitching people on eating the rainbow, and I don't even see the damn rainbow. You know what a rainbow looks like to colorblind people like me? A big yellow arc. That's it. Oh, Roy G. Biv. Roy G. Biv. You know what? For colorblind people, it's the oi. There's no red. There's no green, blue, indigo, violet. A rainbow to us colorblind people is...
Damian, I'm gonna pitch you on flavor. I'm gonna pitch you on two things. You, the tomato eater, I'm gonna pitch you on flavor, and then we'll talk about the business and how that fits into the rest of the people who see.
I want to hear about the flavor. Before I do that, I want to hear about the flavor. I also want to talk a little bit deeper on nutrition, and then also storageability and food waste. Yeah. We got so many things to cover. Before I do that, you might notice if you're watching this, you probably listen to the podcast because that's what most people do. But if you want to watch it, go to my YouTube channel. It's free. Please hit subscribe. The Damian Mason channel, hit subscribe. You can also watch my show, this show, on Acres. You can see Nathan. He's a good-looking young guy. You should probably tune in there and watch it on Acres TV. But either way, if you're watching it, you probably see I'm wearing a Truterra hat. Truterra has been with me for about 1.5 years now as a sponsor of this show, bringing it to you. Truterra is focused on supporting farmers at every stage of the sustainability journey. The point is you could be getting money for doing things you're already doing. Maybe it's cover crops. Maybe it's reduced tillage. Maybe it's a reduction of nitrogen inputs. You could qualify for a sustainability program that pays you money. Agricultural income is always an issue. It's going to be particularly an issue in 2024. What if you could diversify revenue on acres by getting paid for some practices that are good for the environment, also good for your asset, the bottom line, taking care of your soil? Truterra. Truterra, Truterra. They're a subsidiary of Land O'Lakes. Go check it out, truterraag.com. All right, nutritive. Have we covered nutrient, or do you have any more nutritive value you want to get to before we get into storageability and food waste?
Well, I want to give a summary comment that links all those together, right? So you started off talking about the tomato that's sliced on your burger doesn't taste like anything, and you get a tomato at the grocery store and it doesn't have much flavor. And the reason for that is, as you mentioned, the perishability of produce. So if you have a week from when you pick to when it goes bad, that's really tough for the supply chain. You want to push it out to 3 weeks so you can actually do that. The trade-off is you need a fruit that doesn't fully ripen. So what does it mean if a tomato doesn't fully ripen? It means you don't get all the flavor. And in many cases, you don't get nearly as much nutrients. At least the density isn't the same. So what we have done as a supply chain together with consumers is said, we love the convenience of going to the grocery store any day of the week and any day of the year, buying the tomatoes that we like, and they look beautiful and they're pretty fresh, right? What we've traded for that is we've lost some of the flavor. In some cases, we've lost some of the nutritional values. Now, given where we are today, innovative startup companies like us are saying, how do we move this forward? How could we have the great taste and the long shelf life, everything that we want all together with the nutrition?
I wrote about it, and this is my desk copy here of this book. It came out a little over 4 years ago, Food Fear. It's about the past, present, and future of agriculture. It's a book, and I talked about nutrient density and where we go. And this is a tough part, but this is a conversation that any of my listeners have heard me allude to this direction before, Nathan. We have production pretty well figured out. We've been in a surplus now for 40 years, and I'm not talking about starving kids in Africa. Those are not issues of lack of productivity. It is for a lack of productivity in their own country, but it's not because we can't produce food, produce the heck out of it here in the United States and Canada, Western Europe, whatever, Australia. We're really good at production. So the thing is, we still haven't made the mindset shift. We started making tomatoes that would have a 3 to 4 week travel and shelf life expectancy that could get tossed around without breaking. And we made it all about shelf life, transportability, and in doing so, and that's through genetics, through work that, smart scientists do, we made it so that we made a really pretty looking tomato that travels really well, that can get harvested when it's green and then ripen in transit between here and Milwaukee. And then all of a sudden, by the time it gets off of a truck from the Salinas Valley, California, and in Milwaukee, it can still sit around for 4 days before it gets put out on the produce shelf. And by God, it looks really good. The problem is it has zero, it doesn't taste like shit. It tastes like nothing. It tastes like water. It tastes like air. It has zero flavor. And that we use tomatoes as the best example. Mark Schatzker wrote about this in his book, The Tomato or the Dorito Effect. It's all about flavor. I've had him on this show, by the way. If you get bored, go back and listen to the author of The Dorito Effect, Mark Schatzker. But we didn't just do this with tomatoes. We've done it with other things, carrots. I mean, it can be argued a lot of the produce because transportability and shelf life mattered more than flavor. But flavor is intrinsically related to nutritive value. We didn't know that. I'm not talking about artificial flavor. I'm not talking about dumping corn syrup and ladling on some MSG and some stuff from the lab. I'm talking about real flavor. Intrinsic flavor that goes with the food is related to nutritive value. That's one of the big points that Schatzker makes in his book, The Dorito Effect. Take me down that road, Nathan.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And one of the reasons that we're here is we eat with our eyes. And so if you're choosing between something that looks great or something that tastes great, it's way easier to sell something that looks great. And I think understanding why we're here is an important first step. And now the question is, how can we take that next step forward where we have something that has high nutritive value and high flavor and is non-perishable, or has long enough shelf life that you can actually get it through the supply chain, right? So we all love the heirloom tomato.
A constant disconnect is my understanding, and I'm talking constant for in the modern era. Let's say since about the 60s, when it got to where, as your point there, when I'm in Cleveland in February, I want to go and get carrots at a carrot store a little bit better, potatoes store a little better, but tomatoes, some of the stuff, cilantro. For God's sakes, there's cilantro that's on the shelf in Cleveland in February. Well, it sure as heck wasn't grown, in the suburbs of Cleveland. So we've had this modern era of produce availability, let's just say 50 years. But to get there, we made products that I think there's a lot of people that are younger than us that have no idea what a tomato is supposed to taste like, that they don't think that it has any flavor. And that could be, you could probably extrapolate that to grapes or a lot of other produce. So can we reverse this?
Yes, I believe we can. I know we can. And the question is how. So Mark Schatzker is a great example. I'll throw another name out, which is Harry Klee. Harry Klee was a professor at University of Florida. He's one of the world's leading experts in tomato taste and flavor. That's what his whole research program has been focused on. He's one of our advisors, and he has figured out a lot of the attributes in a tomato that deliver great flavor. So we might ask the question, what makes a tomato flavorful and what makes a tomato not flavorful? And what makes it higher or lower in nutrition? And how can we move those levers in a way that still fits with the supply chain and gets sellers something that they can sell, right? So here's one answer. Our purple tomato has longer shelf life. It turns out that antioxidants are not just good for people, they're good for tomatoes as well. So the purple pigment slows the softening process and slows the rotting process of tomatoes. This gives us extra shelf life. It means that we can have a full flavor tomato. So again, most tomatoes that you buy in the grocery store, those have been bred to lose their flavor because there's a trade-off of flavor and shelf life. Our purple tomato, it seems, we can have very high flavor and we can have industry standards of shelf life to get through the supply chain without making that trade-off, right? So it's all the taste, none of the perishability. Yeah. Now, of course, then the tomato is purple. We've often had the questions, is there a way that you can get the shelf life benefit without the purple pigment? We'd like a longer shelf life red tomato. Yeah. So we're not working on that yet, but there's a lot of interest there. The other thing that we're doing, so I mentioned these cherry tomatoes and grape tomatoes, the small ones that you buy in a plastic package. These are the fastest growing segment of tomatoes because they taste good, because they have flavor. And the reason is when they're smaller, they can last a lot longer being full ripe and being full in flavor before they crack. If you have a big heirloom tomato, these things are much more prone to cracking, much more prone to rotting. And so that is actually a sign that the market has reacted. And it's also a good sign when you think about, it's so hard to launch new products. Well, yes, at the same time, 40 years ago, there were no cherry tomatoes, grape tomatoes on the market, and now they're a massive, important part of the market. And the question that, as an entrepreneur, I ask is 10 years in the future, 5 years in the future, what are going to be the new products that are really leading the way? And we can take a step back. We can look at the produce industry and we can see things like easy peeling mandarins that were not a thing a couple decades ago. And now I always have a bag on hand because they're going in my kids' lunches and they scarf these things down, never ending. So there is still a lot of dynamic.
Nathan, breathe for a second. You're very excited. You're the most excitable PhD I've ever had. Usually they run around in their lab coats and talk about how smart they are. So just calm down for a second.
That's what they pay me for.
I want to go to this whole thing that you're talking about where this breeding happens. And then I want to ask if it's brought up. First off, I don't eat citrus. Didn't they used to give you a spoon to peel? If you're going to give you an orange or something, they gave you a spoon to get the rind off of it. And you're saying that we've bred that out of it now?
We've bred that out of that. Yep.
All right.
We've gotten rid of seeds. We've done all sorts of things. So when you think about nutrition and flavor, and you think about health, the most important impact is what we choose to eat. So products like an easy peeling mandarin, I don't eat a lot of normal old navel oranges because they're kind of a pain to peel, right? When you have an easy peeler and you go and pop the skin off and in 2 seconds it's ready to go and there's no seeds in it and it tastes great, boy, you buy those things day in and day out. And so there's a huge opportunity to improve the convenience of healthy food. And this has a huge impact society-wide on health and nutrition.
Okay, so what I like about this, when we began the thing, who asked for this product, I told you then we pretty much have production down. A lot of my people in ag, my audience understands it. But a lot of these people out here still are feed the world. We're all going to starve. And I'm like, stop with this nonsense. It's not true. My God, we've got more production. We're figuring out ways to burn up our productive capacity. We're putting 40% of our corn in the gas tank in the form of ethanol. We don't lack productive capacity. Now it's time to bring nutrient density and nutritive value to then addressing perishability, which also addresses food waste. We waste 35% of what we produce globally. And on the produce side, it's a hell of a lot more than 35%. On the corn, soybean, wheat side, it's not nearly so much. Even on the meat side, it's not so much but produce, when you talk about trying to time the market, all of a sudden my cilantro is ready, but so is everybody else's. They can only be so much cilantro on the shelf in Cleveland. We've got, what, 2/3 of the produce that's produced is wasted, maybe 4/5. I don't know. It's a pretty big number, right?
It's massive. And I know for tomatoes, for instance, about 30% are wasted after purchase. Yeah. So on the counter of the consumer before they're eaten. What can we do about that?
That's not counting what happens. That's not counting what happens pre-consumer when it's on
after purchase.
When it sits on the dock too long in Cleveland, when it gets to, I keep using Cleveland. I don't know. I could use any town. Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, name it. Name some place that you really don't want to live. Cleveland kind of always suits me. All right.
I grew up in Michigan, Damian, so Cleveland works just fine for me.
There you go.
No offense to anyone there. I know some lovely people from there.
Food waste. So food waste, and the reason it's not been addressed is because A, it's kind of hard to do, especially on produce. B, it's generally food is generally affordable to the point where it's like, let's go concentrate on something else. So that's changing a little bit. We've had, year-over-year double-digit bumps in food prices for 3 years now, thanks to the whole government action during the COVID nonsense. But is there more industry attention on food waste and preventing it now?
There is in certain areas of the industry. And I think, let's say the bulk of the supply chain is always looking at shrink. They're always looking at how that impacts the bottom line. And so food waste, when it's tied to cost savings, is really quite important. And also, if you think in the produce industry, waste often translates to product that may be moldy. And when the consumer gets that, that's going to ruin your brand. And so I think that's a main focus. There is a growing attention for sustainability concerns around food waste. And what's sad, and we've seen this in our own consumer research, is if you ask someone on the street, how much do you care about food waste? They say, oh, I care a lot about that. I think it's really bad. And then you say, here's a product that costs a little bit more that has less food waste, and people won't buy it. So the question is, what's going to move the needle with consumers? And this is one of the reasons I'll take it back to the purple tomato and say, we have something that has extra nutrition. We know from our consumer research that's the number one driver. We have something that looks different and looks really beautiful. And it's intuitive, by the way, that it's nutrient dense because of the color. Then at the same time, we have this extended shelf life built in. And so that's my view of how are we going to solve flavor and nutrition and food waste. We've got to do them all together. We need to offer superior products. And I know it's easier said than done, right? We need to find ways that we can hit those buckets together and not offer a product to the consumer and say, well, this is a little bit better in one way, and also it's much more expensive. Say, here's a product that's superior. Yeah. It's better in these 4 different ways. And by the way, it's cost competitive with other products on the market.
So I like the way you're going. You do think more like a marketer, which is unfortunately not common in production agriculture. It's not common even in the middle value added portion of agriculture. I'm a marketer. I'm a promoter. I think like that because I always remember that we are a consumer oriented business, and so many people in ag, especially the old school the old school farmer type is. They don't seem to understand. But God, they all just be happy I gave them food. Well, you know what? That might have happened 100 years ago, but that's not an issue. Hey, I want to get into the marketing. I want to talk about the business side of this.
Yeah.
And more, because that's what we promised. Purple tomatoes, taste, waste, nutritive value, and so much more. We're going to get to all that. Before I do, dear listeners, I want to tell you about my new sponsor, Redox Bionutrients. I've been saying that. They've been my sponsor now since January 1st, and here it is, the end of March, I'm recording this. I keep saying my new sponsor. Okay, they're new in 2024. But anyway, Redox is a 30-year-old company. A guy named Darren Darren Moon started this company 30 years ago in specialty crop out in parts of the world, like where my friend here, Nathan, my guest, is, specialty crop, and then moved into turf and is moving increasingly into broadacre agriculture. And Redox Bionutrients provides superior nutrition, abiotic stress defense, root growth, soil health, and efficient nutrient uptake. They do this by helping farmers switch from traditional fertilizers, which is going to be more and more environmental scrutiny about that, trust me, to efficient carbon-based technology. So you've heard about all these biologicals. This is not a biological. This is not an investor-owned, tech-owned company. This is a company that's been around for 30 years with proven products that have proven themselves in turf and in specialty crop and now increasingly on broadacre agriculture. Check it out, redoxgrows.com, R-E-D-O-X, redoxgrows.com. Okay. The business side, you're an upstart. You already named like those little cherry tomatoes. I see them at the grocery store. They come from one of three companies. They're in a plastic thing. I get it. Mm-hmm. It's a hard place to be a new player. I mean, you're a bigger version of a roadside vegetable stand. Compared to some of these massively big produce companies. Right. I'm not being insulting when I say that. I'm just saying that this is like going toe to toe against Budweiser or something. I mean, this is some tough sledding.
Well, Damian, let me ask you the question that when I took my entrepreneurship class at Cornell's business school, if a bully is picking on you in the playground in recess, what do you do?
I mean, I have no problem standing up for myself. So punch them in the nuts. But is that what your plan is? Is Norfolk Healthy Produce going to be the nut puncher?
We are probably the nut puncher. The answer to that question is you find a bigger bully and go partner up with them. Probably actually what we're doing now is more accurately described as punching up ourselves. Let me run through the value chain that we play in, because I think that'll be helpful for your listeners. And I'm guessing it's not a big surprise. So say you go into the grocery store and you buy a clamshell of tomatoes, or you go and you get your burger and there's a slice of tomatoes on there, right? Work backwards from that value chain. So you have, of course, retailers and restaurants that are preparing that finished product that you buy. They're sourcing tomatoes from farming companies. All of the tomatoes that are at the grocery store come from greenhouses now, the vast, vast majority anyway. So there's farming companies that are either operating greenhouses or they're operating fields. A lot of the tomatoes in the U.S. are imported, by the way.
The person that's listening to this is going to say, why greenhouse versus fields? Just because I'm sure that's going to be a question, because I'm guessing field tomatoes more go to mass amounts of processing because they come all on at one certain time, or in California, 2.5 times a season or whatever it should be. And I'm guessing you're going to say from the field, that's for bulk amounts that become ketchup and tomato juice and tomato sauce. But for the fresh market, it's got to be every day. We've got to have a shipment going out. So greenhouse controls environment. Is that going to be your answer?
I think you're 80% of the way there. Yep. I'll probably give you a 90%. Yep. So for the fresh, it is the stability of production, which is what you said, right? There's not a hurricane, there's not a flood, there's not a plague of locusts. It's much more controlled,
right?
And it's the quality. So the quality coming from a greenhouse, you don't have critters eating the tomatoes. It's a higher quality product. So absolutely right. And then the processed tomatoes and the food service tomato, a lot of that is produced in the open field. And by the way, you talk about the existing businesses, it's a miracle that we have all of the produce and all of the food that we do, right? So we figured out the production side of things, as you say. There's still thousands of people with a lot of experience working day in and day out to pull that off, right? And we shouldn't take that for granted. So I'm looking at how can we push this? How can we make it better? At the same time, it's a pretty fantastic system that's developed that we have today. So we're on the value chain, right? So you're buying your tomatoes at the grocery store. The grocery store is buying them from a farming company that runs a greenhouse if they're fresh tomatoes that you're getting there. Those greenhouses are buying plants or buying seeds, and these come from a breeding company. So the variety of tomato. So let me ask you this, Damian. Can you name a variety of tomato?
Well, you said beefsteak. Is that a variety?
Oh, there might be some called that. We'll give you that. I think
Yeah,
a beefsteak. It's also a category.
And we have tomatoes in my garden at home, and my wife buys them with our friend Johnny, and I get excited. I eat them. But yeah, a type that's an heirloom, but that's not a variety. It just says, oh, it's an heirloom, which means it gets great big and it doesn't look like a grocery store tomato. So no, I can't say that and I don't know. I think where you're asking me that question is, I'm even in the industry of ag and a tomato eater and gardener, and I can't name. So I'm guessing you're going to tell me the average consumer has no idea about a variety.
Average consumer has no idea about variety. They don't know the brands. They don't know the companies. They don't know the space. It's a commodity. And this is, in most of the business of agriculture, a big part of the struggle. You have a product which can be substituted by any of your competitors, and all you can do is compete on price. You can compete on operational efficiency. You can compete on the ability to deliver 365 days a year. You don't have a differentiated product. That's what everyone in the space is really hungry for. So your question is, as a small startup company, how do we compete? How do we break into this market? So first of all, the question is, which part of this market are we breaking into? We are really a seed company. So we have developed a new variety of tomato. We have produced the seeds of those tomatoes, and we sell those seeds to farmers who are growing the product and then selling that on to the value chain. So the first decision that we made is not to go the way that other companies have. And there's a great case study with a company called Calgene, which started just down the road from me in Davis and developed the first GMO tomato called Flavor Saver. And they took the direction, we're going to develop the variety, we're going to farm, we're going to take all that produce all the way to the grocery store. Turns out that's a really challenging job to do. Yeah. So one of our answers is, how do we break into the market? Well, we take our differentiated, premium, very beautiful, very exciting, and demanded product, and we get that into the hands of the best farmers and the best marketers that we can find, and we do partnerships.
Okay, yeah. By the way, the Flavor Saver, that was the one that, dear God, that was when the anti-GMO. See, the GMO thing has genetically modified organisms, genetically engineered food crops. The railing against that, I'd say it hit its zenith between about 2013 and 2017 was like where you just said you could walk to a grocery store and say the word GMO, and 19 suburbanites would run and like put on hazmat suits. They just were terrified. I think then once we decided COVID was the new boogeyman, the GMO thing like absolutely went out the window. And I think now it's climate crisis, catastrophe, climate. We're all going to die by tomorrow by the polar caps melting. That's the new boogeyman. And then COVID is still somehow being propped up by the pharmaceutical companies. And then I think that GMOs are a distant third. Does that sound accurate to you?
I would put GMOs much farther down on the list. And the list that you made is probably what a lot of other people would make in the industry. This has been the huge surprise. So I'm really pleased that we've done so much of this discussion before we've even talked about GMOs. So of course, our purple tomato is purple thanks to genetic modification, what we call bioengineering. And it's a very simple kind. I'll talk about that in a moment. One of the things that I said 2 years ago was, right now, the biggest thing that's different and controversial about our tomato is it's a GMO. I think if we're successful, pretty soon, the thing that's controversial about it is that it's purple. And everyone says, I want a red tomato, I don't want a purple tomato. So our interview kind of positioned that, right? What we are finding is the bioengineered tomato we have is causing almost no controversy. Our own consumer research shows 80% of American consumers want the product. There's only 5% who say, I don't want the product. And that's knowing it's a GMO. We have had amazingly positive seed sales. We've had a ton of media attention. And the feedback from the media, the journalists, and also the industry folks is, we are shocked that the response has been so positive. We thought, we're talking about GMOs, we're going to get all this backlash, we're going to have all this negative feedback. And the answer is, consumers have moved on. We have decades and decades of data now where people have been eating GMOs. There's no single credible example of any negative health consequences. And as a PhD in biology, this is not a surprise. There's a huge diversity of foods that we eat, and GMOs is a tiny little tweak. It's a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
So
Well, the genetic
this is really an important takeaway of where we are now.
The genetic engineering of food crops, I got tired. Like probably everybody in ag. I was at the grocery store bar a decade ago when I had to hear two women from Paradise Valley when the one was saying, well, whatever you do, don't eat any of those GMOs. And I finally, I said, and my wife was getting concerned. I said, like, what are those? Well, they're and it was the same old thing. She heard it at her yoga class or she saw it on Dr. Oz, and she didn't even know what they were, how you could find them. She just knew that there was this thing that Dr. Oz had said, don't consume it. It's ridiculous. So anyway, and then as I pointed out also, I happened to watch the Dr. Oz episode where he was telling his audience of idiots that they spray these GMOs onto your food. And I'm like, it's like genetic modification is a process. That's like saying we sprayed heart replacement. We sprayed orthoscopic surgery onto something. Like, no, it's a process. It's not a chemical. It's a process. Anyway, so the genetic engineering created your product. Yeah, there's a lot less consumer resistance. Like I said, the good thing is now they're all moved on to climate catastrophe, or some are still clinging to COVID or whatever. So the GMO thing, I think, is not as big of a deal. Do you think, from a marketing standpoint, and you're having to punch above your weight because you're coming into a crowded market and you've got a pretty novel product, it's pretty new, the huge produce companies would be happy to let you twist in the wind and never get a foot of shelf space at Albertsons or from Kroger or Walmart or whatever. One of your niches, you're our niche already, your ability to charge an upper price or a premium price for this is the reduction of food waste. And while just like not every customer is going to buy cage-free eggs, there are a bunch of customers that will pay a premium for cage-free eggs or cage-free, all-natural, organic, whatever that thing is. You're kind of in a niche, Nathan, that you can sell the promise of reduction of food waste. You can sell the promise of less environmental impact. Is that where you're going, you think?
It's not where we're focused now. Let me take a step back and say the challenge is, how do you arrange the features, advantages, benefits of the product in a way that moves the needles for consumers, right? So I'm obviously a marketer and I run a business. I'm trained as a scientist, and you learn through that a certain amount of humility. So I have a hunch, hey, I think this is what consumers are really going to go after. Now let's get it onto the market. Let's get it in front of people and let's see what works. And so what we find, and I sort of mentioned this before, when it comes to sustainability and food waste, there's a really big say-do gap. People will say, hey, I prioritize that. Then watch the behaviors that they make when they're at the store and they have to open their wallet and it's a different set. So I'm really much more interested in when someone's standing there in the produce section deciding, do I get product A or product B? Why is it that they pick A? Right? And how do we tap into that? And what we know, it's about 3 seconds that someone spends making that decision. So what do? They're going to see the color. They're going to see if it's something that they know. The best case is whatever they got last week, they liked and they want to buy it again. So that's what we're aiming for. How do we get there? Well, we have something that looks really different and it draws people in. Yep. And I've experienced this for years now. I walk around with purple tomatoes and people say, hey, what is that? Tell me about this. Is that a plum? Is it a cherry? I don't get it. And they're really curious. They're really interested. And then they taste it. They say, wow, this tastes amazing. And it tastes like a tomato. Yeah. It looks like a fruit or something that would be sweet. Tastes like a tomato. Wow, this is fantastic. Where can I buy it? Where can I get more? And so actually, the marketing of this is fantastic because it's different enough. It draws attention, and that attention leads to satisfaction when they say, okay, it's a product that tastes great. It's good for me. It has longer shelf life. And then the key piece, and you sort of alluded to this, is pricing, right? So this is a product that cost more to develop. We had to go through a whole regulatory process with the USDA and with the FDA. So how much of a premium do we have, and how does this get positioned in the market relative to all these generic competitors? And one of the things that we're optimizing for is not just the margin, not just the price, but volume. we do want this product to be something that's broadly accessible to people.
Yep.
This is not going out as, $20 for a little clamshell sitting next to $4 red tomatoes. That wouldn't work for a number of reasons. And so this is now, for me, it's a fun marketing challenge to optimize for it and say, not only how do we get this product packaged in a way, packaged with everything that people are going to like, how do we now price it such that it's doing volume and it's working for everyone in the supply chain? So the retailers say, hey, you get this.
So you said you're a seed company right now. I mean, yeah, you don't have 500,000 acres of land that you're planting these on. You're partnering with producers. Are you partnering with them in the money part of it, or you're just saying, try these, buy some seed, and then I'll help? How it's the old thing, pull through technique where you get consumers, you come on my show and people are talking about it. That's great. But how do you get the consumers in Milwaukee to buy your purple tomato? It has to be there first off. So it's kind of a settled thing about business. Where do you go first to get the product sold?
Yeah. So we've got this together now. And the answer is, our partners who are farmers and marketers are really good at their job, right? So we needed to, I don't know if what's the right analogy here. We needed to get that flywheel turning a little bit, such that some of the first farming and marketing companies would come on and say, hey, we recognize the value of this product. We want to get involved. We think this is going to be a win for us. They're all the time growing and selling products and marketing products. And now they get to turn their attention to our product. So the answer is, work with the folks who have done it before.
Yes.
And I want to answer directly your question about how the business model works.
Can you get on shelves? Are you on shelves?
We're on shelves starting in about a month.
Okay.
And the reason is we're not trying to immediately displace someone who has a relationship with the retailers. This is notoriously between difficult and impossible, right? We're working with sellers who already have those relationships. They already have the shelf space, and we've been doing produce shows, right? So a main key customer is the retailers. So the buyers from all of the important grocery chains come and look at the product and say, oh my gosh, if I had this in my store, I know it would sell out. And the next week, the consumers would come back and they'd buy as much as they can. We want to get there. That's how we sell.
It's on some shelves in about a month. Is it going to be a specialty stores, Whole Foods, something like this? No, because it's GMO. So where does it go? How do you get on shelves? Is it through distribution and you don't have any idea which stores? How do you know?
No, so I know the stores. We're growing with a phenomenal partner called Red Sun Farms. They have a greenhouse in Virginia that can serve quite well that area, so the Southeast US. So we're going to be working with their customers, so their retailers that are served from that production area. So again, what we're not trying to do is set up new distribution, new channels. This, of course, is very hard and very capital intensive. We're looking at these existing supply chains and dropping right in. And so if you're a startup company, one of the struggles you have is how can you actually break into the market? And the answer is, we can produce a lot of tomato seeds in our facilities. Those can go to the growers, and then they take it from there in their very capable hands.
Got it. And then what about if is a consumer going to be able to buy these and plant them in their own garden or their own window box, or is that something you don't even want to fool with?
This has already happened. So we did this for a few reasons. One, we kept getting so much demand to grow the tomatoes at home. Two, it was a dream of the professors who developed the purple tomato. So Kathy Martin, Jonathan Jones, they thought this would be so cool if people could have this GMO purple tomato and grow it in their own gardens. We just started doing this a little over a month ago. We offered seeds for sale direct from our website, and we had much more demand than we ever expected.
So
we did almost 6,000 in the first 2 days. We ran out of seeds. We just shut the store down yesterday, and we had to stand up a seed distribution operation, which is much easier than a tomato distribution operation, but still nothing to sneeze at. We stood that up in our own scrappy startup way.
So what's that mean?
And I should say we had.
Will I be able to get these from my garden this spring, or is it not going to happen?
Well, you might be inside the circle. So shoot me an email if you want them, if you don't have them already. And I'm my blurry screen isn't working. Here's what the seed packet looks like. You can see this here.
The purple tomato.
And these went out to over 10,000 gardeners this year.
I like it.
And it's really a fun way. It went all throughout the US, and it's a great way for people to experience this product in their own backyards and then eventually be able to get it in retail.
I like it. And the last question, you talked about commodity, then ends up being competing on price, et cetera. This is a proprietary thing. Obviously, it's a technologically advanced thing. It's just like Monsanto came out with the first GMO soybeans, and then they got a bad rap because farmers were ripping off the technology, and then they got sued. And then the average New York Times reader said, I heard those farmers are being in trouble because they are forced to plant Monsanto seeds. I'm like, no, they stole technology from Monsanto. Are you going to get ripped off? Am I going to be able to take this tomato plant seed from you, or is a large-scale operator going to take this and start growing purple tomatoes and then just somehow derive their own seed, and then all of a sudden they try and circumvent you? Or are you going to end up being in a Monsanto? Are you going to have lawsuits? What's going on?
Well, so we have no desire to be Monsanto for several reasons. What we have a desire to do is get our product out in a very quality way to our customers. We have a patent that protects not just the variety of tomato we have, but the underlying technology. And of course, I think with your audience, they understand how patenting works. It's very temporary. When the patent expires, other companies will be able to develop competing products. For the life of the patent, we're the only company that can do commercial activity. So obviously we're licensing to other companies that want to work with our technology, and that's an important part of our revenue streams. At the same time, someone cannot steal our tomato and start selling purple tomatoes and pretend that it's not ours, because it's very easy to tell that it's different. It's a completely different situation than if you have a corn variety that has BT or has Roundup. The corn at the end of the day looks like other corn. You don't really know where it came from when it's in the mill. Mm-hmm. So it's a different set of challenges. We're quite fortunate that we have such a distinctive product. And in fact, that's the main benefit.
Yeah, if someone's got purple tomatoes in another year from now, they're obviously stealing from you. So Nathan Pumplin, CEO, Norfolk Healthy Produce. If the person listening to this wants to learn more about it, because whatever, they want to grow for you, they want to process for you, where do they go?
Well, I hope that they go to norfolkhealthyproduce.com. You can find a bunch of information on our company and our contact information there. And we are always looking for folks in the supply chain who want to collaborate, and especially people who realize, you mentioned the zenith of anti-biotechnology, anti-GMO was 2013 to 2017. Consumers have moved on. The supply chain has not. And those who have the vision to see not where the puck is today, but where the puck is going, to use the Wayne Gretzky terminology, that's where we're going. That's where we're playing. We have some phenomenal people that we're working with, and we're looking forward to doing a lot more big things in the years to come.
I love it. His name's Nathan Pumplin. The company's Norfolk Healthy Produce. If you want to learn more about it, he just said go to norfolkhealthyproduce.com, right? You got it. Show. I'm really glad you came here. I'd like to do this again in a couple of years when you can take me now. When I start having purple ketchup, that's the one we're going to know this product caught on, when we have purple ketchup. All right. Till next time, make sure you check out my friends Redox Grows. They're a sponsor here. Redox Grows, Truterra, that can help you with your sustainability programs on your farm. Redox can help you put stuff in your soil that's going to reduce your need for traditional, just always say, expensive fertilizers that don't actually get into your plant. And then also Pattern Ag. Pattern Ag's been with me for a long time. Soil analytics to help you determine what your soil needs. Those are my three companies. I appreciate you listening, and they appreciate you being here, and I appreciate them making it so I can do this for you to listen. Nathan, thanks for being here. I really love it. Purple tomatoes, taste, waste, nutritive value, and so much more. We covered it in this episode. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Damian, so much. Great to be here.
You bet. Till next time, I'm Damian Mason, and this is The Business of Agriculture. Hey, thanks for being here. This episode of The Business of Agriculture was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You've heard me talk about Pattern Ag because I think it's a pretty cool concept. New technology that allows you to predict the problems you're going to have and therefore treat them before those problems cost you money. What kind of problems am I talking about? Pests, and disease. Things like cordon rootworm, sudden death syndrome, cyst nematode, and a whole bunch of other bad things that happen out there in the field that can cost you money. Guess what? Pattern Ag will let you find out ahead of time if the disease or the pest pressure is there, and therefore you're treating it before it costs you any money. What a great concept. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to learn more about their product, their technology, how it can make you money, save you yield, and also where you can find a rep that can come out there and do the work for you. Pattern.ag.